One more issue to pick up on very quickly here, Wendy, and just over a week ago, of course, there was a very blasphemous joke that was delivered on Channel 10's The Project, and there's been a public outcry over it. I haven't spoken too much about it because I've just been reluctant to even say that there was a joke and even just shielding people from the thought that they might even be exposed to these sorts of things. But what are your thoughts about that particular? There was a protest against the project. What was going on?
Yeah, I've been exactly like you, Neil, and I've actually avoided it. But I also am naive enough not to have picked up on how X-rated this joke was. So I do encourage people not to go and look for it or find it, because this is, I now am aware that this was very crude joke. So it was blasphemous and extremely crude. And it has led to calls for the program to be cancelled. There was an apology from the project, and so I was sort of, oh, well, that's good, they've apologised. But when you understand that the same people who laughed at the joke were the ones who the next night apologised, it's hard to accept that there's not a credibility issue there, to be honest. So, yeah, around 600 people gathered outside the Channel 10 studios. And I think one of the things for me that I did say to some media people who asked me about it was that this joke was X-rated, it was blasphemous, but this was about a very sacred moment for, well, you know, if we believe the census, we're talking about 44% of Australians who identify as Christians. This is a very sacred moment, and it is diabolical that this should be the butt of not only just a blasphemous joke, but extremely crude. So I honour the people who gathered outside the studios. Unfortunately, Fred Nile he collapsed and was taken to hospital, but I hear that he's well now. But I can imagine it being a bit overwhelming, because it's hard to even put yourself in the position of understanding that this was so bad. It makes you feel sick in the stomach, to be honest.
It's hard to think of anything worse. What might be heartening is that when the project aired that material, there was actually a backlash from viewers. And sometimes we'd talk about the project and say it's the most woke current affairs program on the TV. And but the interesting thing is, it's just like they overstepped the mark. And there were people, and perhaps they came from a Christian religious faith, perhaps they didn't, perhaps it was just so over the top that people couldn't help but actually voice their disapproval. But it might be actually, might be significant. Get your thoughts here on the fact that there was a big backlash that came, that people did call in and they did complain, and it forced the project to actually have some form of apology.
Yeah, and people power is a lot stronger than anybody gives it credit for. And, sometimes people contact the ACL and say, can you do something about this? And I say, well, the most effective will be for you to actually contact your local member, or contact Channel 10 yourself, or go to the library and do it yourself, because that is actually probably one of the most powerful ways for people to protest. But I am encouraged by the pushback. I'm encouraged by the number of people who were prepared to gather. There were, parliamentarians there as well. I certainly know Fred Nile was there. But I think one of the reasons was it wasn't just this blasphemous, because in terms of blasphemy, Jesus was the one who was turning the other cheek. He was loving and kind and gracious, and I think people think they can get away with being blasphemous about Jesus because he wasn't someone who retaliated. But I think what shocked people in this instance too was that it wasn't just X-race, it wasn't just blasphemous, it was really very, very crude. And to be honest, I still don't even really understand the depths of how crude it was, but I know from people saying to me that it was very crude. So I think that was also for parents who allow their children to be watching TV at that time, which is not really late. That would have been so upsetting for them as well.
Well, Wendy, thank you so much for another set of deep insights around those things that are happening, that are developing, certainly around the New South Wales state election that's less than 2 weeks out, and there are some major things there that Christians need to be focusing on. Let me point listeners to the Australian Christian Lobby website, acl.org.au. That's acl.org.au. Wendy, thanks so much for your update today on 2020.
Thank you very much, Neil. God bless you.